Honorable friends, this visit to Beijing is much more than an opportunity to experience one of the world's great historical cities. I came here to listen to your collective wisdom and to talk tangibly about peace. Being the youngest in this forum, I feel the great responsibility that lays on my shoulders to represent to all of you, the youngsters in Israel who seek peace. I was born, raised, and lived most of my life in the city of Hadera, in the area where the West Bank is almost touching the shores of the Mediterranean Sea. Hadera was the first city that suffered terror attacks in the Second Intifada. I remember seeing from the window of my room the dark smoke after a car bomb exploded. I remember hearing the sound of shooting from the street parallel to mine, and I remember the fear of taking a bus after watching on television how another bus was blown up literally outside of my favorite pizza place. Thankfully, injury or death never came to me, but this wasn't the case for others in my city. The reason I'm telling you this is because I believe that unless you actually understand the consequences of being born into the conflict, you cannot solve it. And this is true for both sides, the weak and the strong. And we don't even have to identify who is who. An older friend from the US once told me, and I'm quoting, "I remember the days of the Cold War. We had emergency drills in schools where we had to find a shelter or hide underneath the table. It didn't matter to any of us how strong the US military was or how many nuclear warheads we had. We were just scared." End quote. I have never checked it, but I'm pretty sure that there is someone in Russia who has felt the same way. The feeling of an existential threat is never objective and always disconnected from the physical aspects of security. In Israel and Palestine, over the years, fear has transformed into hate. The needed and unneeded separation created generations of people who don't know each other, each side knowing only the extreme representation of the other side. This, sadly, is because hate helps overcome fear. Fear is perceived as a weakness and hate as a strength. We have to change that. Any peace comes with a compromise, and for a compromise to happen, people must be willing to sacrifice. Unfortunately, today people are willing to sacrifice more for the status quo than they are willing to sacrifice for peace. We have to change that. The first Palestinian I have ever met was from Nur el-Shams refugee camp. It happened during an event organized by an amazing organization called Windows Shababik. I was young and curious, and I think I regret this meeting until this very day. I've never heard before so many accusations and learned so many new terms like Nakba, Hakelauda, but somehow I kept going to these meetings. Since that meeting over a decade ago, I've met with more and more Palestinians, including with Geneva Initiative, and Gadi here is a witness, and I shall continue to meet, listen, and talk to them. Looking back and connecting back the dots by seeing who I am still in touch with, I realized that without even admitting it or publicly saying it, we all aim for the same end goal. Now this is important. Here is the contrast. The ones who lost hope never stayed in touch. There is a good reason I'm telling you this, and it is that the worst term I ever been exposed to by my Palestinian friends in our conversation is normalization. That term describes the expectations of some Palestinians from others to boycott any contact with Israelis, including dialogue. 3 years ago, as part of a delegation to the major Palestinian city of Ramallah, led by who turned out to be my future boss, MK Hilik Bar, who is leading the Israeli team today. During this visit, I was privileged to ask Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas one question publicly. I asked him, "Mr. President, what do you do against the anti-normalization movement within Palestine? What do you do to protect my counterparts from the Palestinians who call them traitors and sometimes threaten their lives?" Mr. Abbas answered that he himself, being a role model by sending his grandchildren to Seeds of Peace activities, he repeated the answer and said that he himself is not an anti-normalizer. But I know that there are still many Palestinians who will never meet an Israeli like me because of this movement against the most basic of contact, talking to the other side. Each Palestinian who don't meet an Israeli is also an Israeli not meeting a Palestinian. We must change it. I encourage the Palestinian team to include this issue in this draft. Friends, the bottom line is this. It doesn't matter how difficult or hard the discussion will be. As long as it's not violent, it is vital. We have to create this connection between the peoples. And don't worry, it will never normalize the abnormal, because it will never normalize politics or the need for self-recognition, nor the will for independence. My people have 2,000 years of experience in that, so trust us. It can only bring better communication that will someday lead to peace. I don't know if I would ever have understood the fear of the Palestinians without those encounters I had. And I'm convinced that they never ever could have understood our existential fear without those meetings between my friends and I. This understanding on a personal level is key to any successful negotiation, and in fact provides the stability and sustainability of peace. To conclude, it is a great honor for me to participate in this delegation. Thank you for receiving us here in Beijing, a city with 3,000 years of history just like Jerusalem. To have a conversation with you, leaders who actively paved the way to the Oslo Accords and many other sincere attempts to achieve peace. I am learning from those who work for peace every day, and it is my own honor and passion to be able to bring to this discussion the feelings and opinions of the younger generation. I appreciate your listening and promise to listen to you. I encourage you all in what you do and offer our sincere assistance. Let us together try once to incorporate a young team of leaders into the next informal or formal negotiations, whether they will be direct or facilitated by China. This paper can set a new standard to include young representatives in any future negotiations. The UN, by the way, already adopted a resolution in December 2015 in the same spirit. This request is made not for the sake of control, but because we were born into this conflict and we don't want to leave it.